start out by talking about our problem. Oncor is an electricity supplier to retail service providers in North Texas. A majority of the electricity here in Texas, or excuse me, like in the Dallas-Fort area, is from Oncor. Problems occur restoring meters in high volume storms. So when a big storm comes through Texas and just takes all of our powers, this is crunch time for them. They really need to try to restore power as quickly as possible. Their existing system receives outage information from smart meters and call centers. Smart meters are meters that are on house. They're a digitalized meter that send information to Oncor about electricity flows. Usually runs in about hour intervals, sometimes less. So when the power is out, the smart meter will read that no electricity is flowing, and it will let these service centers know. Repair teams or contractors are sent out as available. When a big storm hits, there aren't going to be enough people to restore all the power that's necessary. So, just when someone becomes available, that person goes on to another project to restore that power. No time estimate for when individual meters will be repaired. And most importantly, when the power is out, Oncor doesn't make any money. This is, when the power's on, that's how they generate their revenue. So when it's out, they're not generating any revenue. In a high volume situation, there's a lot of pressure for Oncor to replace this power, get it back on as quickly as possible. And then some background information and the information that was provided for us. On December 5th, I'm sure everyone remembers this, we were hit with a huge ice storm. It took a total of 6 days for everyone in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to receive their power back on. They were unable to give areas specific estimates for restoration of power. This is really important when it's this cold, when it was that cold outside and families didn't have power. They were unable to tell them, we're going to be able to get your power back on in 24 hours, or maybe 12 hours, etc. But they weren't able to do that. And Oncor provided us a set of constraints that we need to take into consideration when solving our problems. And then the questions to be answered is, what is the best way to form crews and through which medium can this be achieved? And the other question we need to take into consideration is, what is the most efficient and effective way to assign these crews to repair the outages?
The constraints we were dealing with were how to repair an outage. So this dealt with personnel. There's a series of personnel that have to be called in. When an outage is first reported, they have to send a first responder out who evaluates what the situation is, explains what kind of outage it is, and then he determines what crew will next be needed. This could be a vegetation crew, which would deal with downed trees or something like that, who might have to clear it first, and then a distribution crew, which is employed by Oncor, and these are people that can actually go out and resolve the issue. In a high volume storm like this, they sometimes have to employ mutual assistance crews, which are called in from different areas. These are much more expensive, and there's actually no guarantee that they'll show up. In the storm in December, they basically paid in advance for people that may or may not show. So we also had to deal with personnel crews, the distribution crews that have rules for how they can be formed. They're put into 2 and 4-man teams, and they have to consist of certain people and trucks. And they're located in different service centers located throughout Oncor's coverage area.
So our goal in this project, we wanted to improve the distribution of the crews to assist in returning the power more quickly in these high volume storms. And so we wanted to do this through maximizing the time available for each crew and minimizing the distance that each crew had to travel between the outages. We also wanted to more efficiently form the crews to maximize the number that were available. Obviously, the more number of crews that there are available, the faster that Oncor can deploy them and the faster that they can get the power back on. And we also wanted to minimize the personnel and crew requirements and their associated costs.
So the information that we were provided by Dr. Jones, who worked with us from Oncor, consisted of outages from the December 5th storm, and there were about 7,300 outages over 6 days. And this information included when they happened, where they happened, what kind of outage they were, and whether they were a critical outage or not. And this means if there's something like a downed line or if they're in an area that needs to be restored immediately. And those are always first priority. And we also received information about what service center has what kind of personnel. And this helps with forming crews where people need to be at a certain time to form a team. We started off by trying to get an overall view of this problem. So when an outage comes in, who handles it, and what are the possibilities that could happen. So if the first responder is able to deal with it, gave us just a flowchart view, and it has a weak simulator, but it helped us get a better view of what was happening. Then we tried to divide it into two different problems. The first one was how crews are formed. So there are two different types. There are 2-man crews and 4-man crews, and they consist of different distribution supervisors, journeymen, apprentices, helpers, and then different types of trucks. So you need one supervisor, one journeyman, and you can have extra apprentices or helpers. So this is divided into 4 different types of teams, 2 different types of 2-man teams, and 2 different types of 4-man teams. And we used a GAMS model to help us determine how many we wanted of each. And we used constraints to try and balance how many of each type of team member would be used. So in a 2-man team, for example, you need as many servicemen as you need journeymen. So from this, we got 136 crews that would be formed, and they're located throughout most of the service centers. So this gave us a starting location for them. So then we tried to address assigning these crews to the outages, and to do this as efficiently as possible. We tried a number of different things, and we've been thinking about this problem very continuously. Finally, we decided to write a very simple C program that would just assign them in a very linear way, looking at each outage as it happened, and trying to find a crew that could solve the problem most quickly by looking at the travel time and when it would be available next. So this didn't work exactly as we wanted it to, but it did give us a better view of what was happening and how we could solve it.
So some of our conclusions, recommendations, given the time constraint of this project, only on 1 semester, we suggest further study with this project. So next year for the senior design classes, they can further develop it and continue on with our C and C++ programs, and they can also add in some of the constraints that we took out. So we took out vegetation crews and the first responders. After they developed the model a little more, they could add those back in, and some of the other constraints that we were given by Oncor also that we had to take out in order to simplify. We also suggest that future groups develop a simulation model to better outline the sequence of events that can happen in a storm such as this. And also with more extensive record keeping that would show how an outage was repaired, how long it took to repair. This could definitely significantly improve, creating a better picture of the problem, and that could, from there, that could branch out into a bunch of other senior design projects. So thank you very much for joining us today. Does anyone have any questions?
You were able to use your GAMS model to actually build up the crews and put them in specific service centers.
Yes, so we did.
So what was your criteria for having them located in a specific center?
Well, we tried to use distances between, so we tried to make sure that we have to travel less, but we didn't have any other criteria.
So basically you were putting in places so that you
Yes.
thought they could get quicker into areas that were in
and
trouble.
form as many as possible. So
Okay.
if go in one place could be more people, then
Okay. Did you try to include any mutual assistance crews, or did you leave that part out?
didn't know.
Yeah, that makes it no problem.
Yes.
Is there any information on those? They were kind of mutual assistance. I'm not sure if you have any.
Yeah, mutual assistance crews are kind of interesting. We have a whole group that it's their job to contact mutual assistance crews. We're actually, Oncor is part of a mutual assistance organization where we already have in-place agreements, so we don't have to try to hammer those out before we ask for people. But the problem you run into is that if we've got a massive outage, it's not unusual for, say, Oklahoma to have one too. Well, we've got mutual assistance with them, but we can't get any crews from them because they're all busy trying to fix their own systems. So on the December storm, we had crews as far away as Alabama come and help us restore power on that.
You also had the problem, lots of people that couldn't show up, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Didn't you have the problem also that people couldn't show up?
Yes, yes.
That
We
you had-
realized also on the December ice storm that the roads were in pretty bad shape. And some of those crews from Alabama only got as far as Tyler, and then they couldn't come into the Metroplex. Now, the smart thing would have been to have them fix the outages in Tyler, because that's where they were. Excuse me, but we didn't do that. Because we had them scheduled to come into Dallas, so we were expecting them there. And they got stopped and they sat there for a while. So,
I think that's definitely the most interesting part of the job, is that it's a high-pressure situation. And like you said, you kind of develop a war room when this situation happens.
we actually have a war room. We call it the service, the system emergency center. It's actually in downtown Dallas. And that's where everything is run from when you have a major storm like this. Normally, like a day like this week, if you went out and looked, you'd see outages. I mean, we have a few, it happens. But a day like this wouldn't open up the SEC. When the SEC opens up, we're in big trouble. So, and that's right, we have groups from every organization populate. And if you look at, if you've ever seen like what NASA looks like with all these screens and everybody sitting in, that's what it looks like.
I think this is not one of the problems that companies have, but they're kind of real low priority, and maybe we'll take a look at it someday. Oh, here's a senior design team. Maybe they can look at this bottom of the drawer problem. This is like a real serious frontline problem that a lot of companies have, and it's really a hard problem. And would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. This is a very difficult problem. That's why I brought it here. If it was easy, I would have already done it.
Anybody else? Yeah, I have a question. Thank you all very much.